And in this video, I want to share with you some strategies I use now that I'm over 50 compared to what I did in my younger years to help me deal with overwhelm. So, just to define overwhelm, it's that feeling we get day to day sometimes where we feel like we can't cope, but everything's urgent, but nothing's doable. And it can really, at least it used to, really stop me in my tracks. And when I was in 20s, 30s, 40s, I would sort of panic or not do anything, and the whole day would be wiped out. And, you know, I know that as I've gotten older, that is one of those things that I've been able to come up with some new strategies. So I want to share those with you and what works for me. And the first thing I want to add here is like a caveat is that I don't I don't think there should be any judgment tied to the fact that you get overwhelmed. And this is what I used to spin out with in my younger years. It's like not only would I feel overwhelmed, but then I would beat myself up for feeling overwhelmed. So completely unproductive, right? And that's something I definitely want to avoid in my 50s. And I do. And I do it by using some of the strategies I'll share with you now. So the first one is to, let me just look, is to recognize your triggers. So we all have our own triggers for what makes us feel overwhelmed. And I gave an example with the email because that's a big one for me. Now, I have a full-time job that's computer based, so I spend a lot of time in email, and that's a lot to do with my work. And particularly if I know I've been away for a week or so, I know I'm going to come back to a large load of unanswered emails. And knowing that, I try to plan ahead. And I'll talk a little bit about what I do in some of my plans. But similarly to starting this YouTube channel, there's so many tasks and so many new things to learn that if I think about them all, I just feel frozen. Again, I just feel like I don't know where to start. So instead, I plan for feeling that way and I plan what I'm going to do in that case. So I actually plan little action steps for myself. And that helps me go into those scenarios with a little more confidence. And that's definitely something that took me decades to come up with, but I promise it helps. Now, some of these tools I'm going to give you are sort of interchangeable, so you'll have to check in and find out where you're at. But the next one is to kind of check in your body to see what's happening for you. A lot of times, our bodies will give us those signals before our brains have caught on. And that's definitely true for me. And overwhelm for me has a couple ways it manifests. If it's feeling like I've got too much to do and not enough time and I'm sort of spinning out, I might feel kind of buzzy. I might feel it here in my solar plexus, and I can feel my my jaw starting to clench. Or this can also happen. I can just feel completely defeated, and I just want to doom scroll and sit and do nothing and forget about the whole thing. And both of those to me are ways that it can manifest. It just kind of depends on what time of day, hormonal, what's going on, who knows. So I would suggest pausing, kind of checking in with your body, figuring out what's doing. And when I do realize and I am back in my body, I try to take a couple deep breaths. So I'll give you some real time examples because honestly, filming can make me feel a little nervous. Not necessarily overwhelmed. I recognize it's probably nervousness, but just taking a couple deep breaths means I can slow down and approach without panic and more of a problem solving. And that's what this next tool does as well. If you can name what's happening, either because you've recognized it happening in your body or perhaps because you recognize the emotion first, that often can give your brain a pause as well. It'll then start looking for solutions rather than just slipping into a spiral. And so if I think, ooh, yeah, Aaron, this is overwhelm, then I can think like, oh yeah, it's okay. We can reassure myself. And I've already probably shared with you in other videos, I do a lot of talking to myself. But I'll reassure myself, like, oh, hey, we know that this is happening when we get back from vacation. So we've got this covered. Or like, oh, yeah, there's this video that's giving you all these ideas of what you can do for your YouTube channel. But we know we're not going to do those all tonight. So take it easy, girl, and we'll get to those. And naming it and recognizing your body, again, sometimes those things will be interchangeable and sometimes they happen all at the same time. What I do find sometimes is that, particularly if the body piece is buzzy for me, or if I'm feeling particularly low energy, I do find sometimes I need to move my body to kind of get that cortisol out of there and reset my nervous system. And I'm talking about really short intervention here, like do a lap around the block or do 20 jumping jacks. I don't think I could actually do 20 jumping jacks, but if you can, please try that and let me know how it works for you. Or just even shaking your hands out can all do that. But just kind of letting your body process that. And if you've got some good tips for that, I'm always up for listening to it. Sometimes for me, I'll put on a good song that I know I can do a little boogie, and that'll make me not only lift up my energy levels, but also just improve my mood. So, you can try that. And if you have a good song, be sure to put it in the comments. Um, let's say we've got there. So we've got our body settled a little bit. We've worked out some cortisol, and now we actually need to look at the task. I'm by no means finished here. And part of my planning will be to sort of break this down into chunks. And I know that that's a productivity hack, probably a lot of you have heard of. So I won't, there's probably lots of tips out there, but I like to give myself, for example, with the email, if I know I'm going to be facing a whole lot of emails, honestly, what I really try to do is book in my vacations, which means I try to give myself a day between the day I return and the before I have to start work. In my 20s, I could pull it off, flights in at midnight and start the next day. Not so much now. So, as much as possible, I try to plan so I have a full day before I actually have to like meet with people or meet my team. And when I do that, what I find is I'll spend a couple hours maybe clearing the deck so that by the time I get to work and have to return to interacting with people, I've kind of cleared at least the huge hill of emails. That doesn't always work. I get it. And sometimes even just looking at that mountain of emails, even if I've given myself time to do it, will still have that effect. So in that case, I might chunk down further and you can get as funneled down as you need to. So I might filter by emails from my boss or emails with the exclamation point, which by the way, I really do not like, but they do exist out there. And sometimes they are important, but I'll filter to and try to prioritize and get to those. I also sometimes practice like the minimum baseline idea, which is if I know I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling, just can't get there, what's the minimum thing I can do to kind of move this progress? What can I do in the next 5 minutes? I'm often surprised by how much I can accomplish, and also you'll often find that that'll get the momentum starting and you'll keep going. I do this a lot with cleaning because it's not my favorite, but I'll be like, all right, I'm just going to clean the stove, and before you know it, I'm sweeping the floor, the counters are clean. Ta-da. So I would also just say, as part of that chunking thing, give yourself a small finish line. So you've done the task, you've finished a few things, then give yourself a win in there. You need something to celebrate when you're feeling overwhelmed because that's going to keep you in a nice dopamine hit stage. And that's what our brains want, right? If we can do it with the task at hand and the thing that was potentially going to make us feel overwhelmed, it's going to feel more like progress than if we go and try to get, some dopamine release through some other kind of buffering or, in my case, chocolate chip cookie dough. Thanks to my mom, I still have some of those in the freezer. But again, food, drink, whatever the distraction you might use instead of working on your task. A lot of times, I also will just set myself a timer. I work by my timer. That's like probably the most used feature on my watch is the timer. But give yourself the 5 minutes, a small finish line, so that you can kind of high five yourself later when you've succeeded. So, again, I just wanted to offer some tools that I have developed just from being over 50 and looking in my past, seeing what's worked, and, and hoping that some of these might resonate with you. I'm also always interested to hear what might be working for other people at any age, that what happens to you when you might get overwhelmed. I'd also like to hear what your triggers are. Maybe one of the other viewers has a great idea for that. So if you're liking this content, be sure to check out the other video. And I think there may be one now, but there'll be a whole playlist or series here. And be sure to subscribe. This is Self-Coaching for Skeptics, and I'm Erin, and I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Overwhelm is the new tiger. That's right. It can sometimes feel like your email has claws and is chasing you, just like the same sort of threat.